Maya checked her reflection one more time in the hotel mirror. The deep blue dress fit perfectly, professional yet elegant. She took a breath and grabbed her clutch, her best friend's wedding. She should be excited, but something about returning to this coastal town made her stomach twist. 7 years. 7 years since she'd driven away from here, watching the ocean disappear in her rearview mirror. The rehearsal dinner was already in full swing when she arrived. Laughter spilled out from the beachside venue, mixing with the sound of waves. She hugged her friend, complimented the decorations, accepted a glass of wine from a waiter. Everything felt surreal, like stepping into a memory that didn't quite fit anymore. Then she saw him. Ethan was standing near the bar, talking to someone she didn't recognize. He looked different. Older, obviously. His shoulders were broader, his hair slightly longer. But when he laughed at something his companion said, it was the same laugh she remembered from 1,000 summer nights. Her heart stopped. She turned quickly, nearly spilling her wine. This couldn't be happening. Nobody told her he would be here. She glanced back, hoping she was wrong, that it was someone who just looked like him. But no, it was definitely Ethan. "You okay?" Her friend touched her arm, concerned. "Fine. Just, who's that guy by the bar?" "Oh, that's Ethan. My fiance's cousin. Sweet guy." "Why?" Maya forced a smile. "Just curious. Nice turnout." She tried to focus on conversations, on catching up with old friends who still lived in town, but she kept feeling his presence across the room, like a magnetic pull she couldn't ignore. Twice, she almost left. Twice, she talked herself into staying. The dinner moved outside to the terrace. String lights glowed above long tables set with candles and flowers. Maya found her place card and her stomach dropped, 2 seats down from Ethan. Of course. He noticed her as she approached. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved. Then he stood, polite and uncertain. "Maya?" "Hi, Ethan." The conversation around them continued, but between them, silence stretched thin and fragile. He looked like he wanted to say something, but people were settling into their seats, and the moment passed. Dinner was torture. She made small talk with the woman beside her, laughed at jokes, pretended everything was normal. But she was painfully aware of Ethan just a few feet away. She noticed he barely touched his food. She wondered if he felt as off balance as she did. After dinner, people wandered toward the beach or gathered in small groups. Maya slipped away to the far end of the terrace, needing air, needing space. The ocean stretched dark and infinite before her, and she gripped the railing, trying to steady herself. "I didn't know you'd be here." His voice came from behind her, soft and careful. She didn't turn around. "Me neither. I didn't know you'd be here." He moved to stand beside her, keeping a respectful distance. They both stared at the water. "You look good," he said. "Different, but good." "Thanks. You too." The conversation felt stiff. Nothing like how they used to talk for hours about everything and nothing. But what did she expect? 7 years of silence stood between them like a wall. "How have you been?" he asked. "Good. Busy. I'm a lawyer now, in the city." "That's great. You always said you wanted to do something big." She nodded, not trusting herself to say more. "Maya." He said her name quietly, almost like he was testing it, seeing if it still fit in his mouth after all these years. Something in the way he said it, with such gentleness and something that sounded like longing, made her breath catch. Her hands started trembling. She gripped the railing harder. "I should get back," she said quickly. "Early morning tomorrow." She walked away before he could respond, before she could do something stupid like cry or apologize or ask if he ever thought about her. Inside, she found the bathroom and locked herself in a stall, pressing her palms against her eyes. This was supposed to be a fun weekend. Celebrate her friend. Dance, drink champagne, not fall apart because a boy from her past said her name. Except he wasn't a boy anymore, and he wasn't just anyone from her past. She composed herself, fixed her makeup, and returned to the party. But for the rest of the evening, she felt his eyes on her. And every time she heard someone say her name, she remembered how different it sounded when he said it. Maya barely slept. She kept replaying that moment on the terrace, the sound of her name in Ethan's voice. At dawn, she gave up and went for a walk on the beach, hoping the morning air would clear her head. The wedding day blurred together in a chaos of photos and last-minute emergencies, and helping her friend stay calm. But through it all, Ethan kept appearing. They were paired together for the processional. Of course they were. "Guess we're stuck together," he said with a slight smile as they lined up. "Looks like it." Walking down the aisle with her arm linked through his felt surreal. She could feel the warmth of him through his suit jacket, and it brought back a flood of memories. Summer bonfires, nights on his boat, the way he used to hold her hand while they walked these same beaches. At the reception, she discovered they were seated at the same table. She was starting to suspect her friend of matchmaking, despite claiming ignorance about their history. Dinner passed in a strange haze of forced conversation and stolen glances. Ethan talked about his work, how he'd taken over his father's boat repair business. He made it sound simple, uncomplicated. She envied that. "What about you?" he asked. "The big city life treating you well?" "It's exactly what I wanted," she said automatically, then wondered if that was still true. "Good. I'm glad you got out. Did everything you planned?" There was no bitterness in his voice, which somehow made it worse. She wanted him to be angry at her for disappearing. It would be easier than this careful kindness. When the dancing started, she tried to stay at the table, but her friend pulled her onto the floor. Then, inevitably, the bride pushed Ethan toward her. "Dance with each other. Stop being weird." They had no choice, not without making a scene. Ethan held her properly, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. They moved stiffly at first, like strangers. But then the music shifted to something slower, and muscle memory took over. Their bodies remembered what their minds tried to forget. "Remember the summer bonfire?" he asked quietly. "We danced just like this." "Ethan, don't." "I'm not trying to make this hard. It's strange, isn't it? Being here like this." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He pulled her slightly closer, and she let him. Just for a moment, she let herself remember what it felt like to be held by someone who once knew every part of her. "Maya," he whispered close to her ear. That sound again. Her name carrying weight she couldn't measure. She felt tears burning behind her eyes and quickly stepped back. "I need some air." She walked quickly toward the exit, fighting to keep her composure. Outside, the night was cool and clear. She found a bench away from the party and sat down, pressing her hands to her face. "I'm sorry." Ethan appeared in front of her, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. "You keep running away from me," he said. "Is it that bad? Talking to me?" "No, that's not it." "Then what?" She looked up at him. This man who used to be the boy she loved more than anything. "Why didn't you ask?" The words came out before she could stop them. "Why I left. Why I never said goodbye." He sat down beside her, keeping space between them. "I figured you had your reasons, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Easier to just think you moved on." "I didn't move on," she said quietly. "My dad got into trouble. Gambling debts. Bad people. We had to leave in the middle of the night. I didn't have time to explain, and after I was too ashamed to reach out." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "I looked for you. For months. I called everyone I could think of. Your number was disconnected. Your house was empty. It was like you vanished. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. I just wish I'd known. All these years I thought maybe I did something wrong. No. God. No, you were the only thing I didn't want to leave. The confession hung between them. Maya felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be in years. What happened after? He asked. We moved 3 times in 2 years. Dad eventually got help, got clean. I put myself through school, worked constantly, built a whole new life. Sounds lonely. It was. She'd never admitted it before. But it was desperately lonely. They sat on that bench for hours, talking like they used to. Ethan told her about his brief marriage, how they were too young and wanted different things. She told him about the endless nights studying, the cases she won, the apartment she barely lived in because she was always working. The party ended around them, guests drifting away, but neither of them moved. Walk with me? Ethan asked, when the venue staff started cleaning up. They walked along the beach, shoes in hand, letting the waves wash over their feet. The moon painted everything silver. Maya felt something shifting inside her, like a door she'd kept locked was slowly opening. I wrote you letters, she admitted. Dozens of them. Never sent any. Why not? Fear, I guess. That you'd moved on. That you'd be angry. That it was too late. It's never too late for the truth. They stopped walking. The ocean whispered around them, and Ethan turned to face her. Stay a few more days, he said. Let me show you the town. Things have changed. Maybe you'd be surprised. Every logical part of her brain screamed no. She had work. She had her life waiting in the city. She had responsibilities. Okay, she heard herself say. The next morning, she changed her flight. Ethan picked her up at her hotel in his truck, the same old Ford he drove in high school, somehow still running. He drove her through town, pointing out new restaurants, the renovated pier, the bookstore that finally expanded. Remember this place? He stopped at the lighthouse. They used to come here every weekend, climbing to the top and watching the boats. She nodded, following him up the familiar stairs. At the top, the view took her breath away. She'd forgotten how beautiful it was. I come here sometimes, Ethan said, when I need to think. About what? Life, choices, roads not taken. She understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. They spent 3 days together. Ethan took her out on his boat, and she remembered how much she loved the feeling of sun and salt spray. They ate at the diner where they had their first date, sitting in the same booth. They drove up the coast and watched the sunset from a cliff they used to visit. On the 3rd night, they were on his boat, anchored in a quiet cove. The sky blazed orange and pink, and Maya felt something breaking open inside her. All the control she'd maintained, all the careful distance she kept from her emotions, suddenly felt exhausting. I missed this, she said. I missed feeling like myself. Who are you in the city? Someone efficient, someone who wins, someone who doesn't need anything from anyone. Sounds terrible. She laughed, surprising herself. Sometimes it is. Ethan moved closer and she didn't move away. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. She kissed him back. 7 years of longing pouring into it. They stayed on the boat as stars filled the sky. They talked and kissed and held each other like they were making up for lost time. When he whispered that he never stopped loving her, something in Maya's chest cracked wide open, and then panic hit. What was she doing? She had a life, a boyfriend, Daniel. She hadn't even thought about Daniel in 3 days. They'd been together for 2 years. He was a good man, stable, appropriate. He fit perfectly into her carefully constructed world. This, whatever this was with Ethan, was chaos. It was reckless. It was everything she'd trained herself not to want. I can't do this, she said, pulling away. Maya, wait. No, this was a mistake. I got caught up in nostalgia and memories, but this isn't real life. Real life is complicated and messy, and I have responsibilities. So do I. That doesn't mean we can't figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. I'm leaving tomorrow. This was nice, but it was just old feelings getting confused with the present. She saw hurt flash across his face, quickly masked. He nodded slowly. Right. Old feelings. Got it. Ethan. It's fine. I'll take you back to your hotel. The drive was silent. When he dropped her off, she wanted to say something, anything to fix the look in his eyes, but she just thanked him and went inside. That night, she cried for the first time in years. She booked a flight for early morning and left before dawn, running away from the coastal town for the second time in her life. The city welcomed her back with traffic and noise, and the familiar smell of exhaust and street vendors. Maya threw herself into work with fierce determination. She took on extra cases, stayed late at the office, avoided thinking about ocean sunsets and the way Ethan had looked at her. Daniel noticed she was different but didn't push. He was patient like that. One Friday evening, he took her to an expensive restaurant with white tablecloths and waiters who spoke in hushed tones. She knew something was coming before he even reached into his jacket pocket. The ring was beautiful, tasteful. Exactly what someone would expect for a successful lawyer marrying a financial analyst. Daniel's proposal was thoughtful and well-rehearsed. He talked about their future, their compatibility, the life they could build together. She said yes because saying no seemed cruel, because the ring fit, because this was what people did. They found someone appropriate and they built a sensible life together. But the ring felt heavy on her finger. Work became her escape. She won a major case, one she'd been preparing for months. Her colleagues congratulated her. Her boss hinted at the partnership she'd been chasing for 3 years. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow. Her friend called, the bride from the wedding, and somehow knew without asking that something was wrong. "You're doing it again," her friend said gently. "Doing what?" "Running. You did it 7 years ago when your family left, and you're doing it now." "I'm not running. I'm here, living my life, getting engaged." "Are you, though? Really living? Or are you just checking boxes on someone else's list?" The question haunted her. She started noticing things. How she and Daniel never laughed together, not really. How their conversations were pleasant, but never deep. How she felt like she was playing a role in her own life. One night, unable to sleep, she found the box. She'd kept it all these years, moved it from apartment to apartment without ever opening it. Inside were the letters she'd written to Ethan and never sent. She read them, these desperate messages from her younger self, letters full of longing and apology, letters where she admitted that leaving him broke something in her, letters where she described building walls around her heart so thick that nothing could get in or out. In one letter, dated 3 years after she left, she'd written something that stopped her cold now. "I'm becoming someone successful, someone impressive, but I don't recognize myself anymore, and I'm scared that when I finally have everything I'm supposed to want, I'll realize I wanted the wrong things all along." She'd written that when she was 21, and here she was at 28, engaged to a man she didn't love, excelling at a job that exhausted her, living in a beautiful apartment that felt like a hotel. The next morning, she called Daniel. They met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. He saw it coming before she said anything. "It's him, isn't it?" Daniel asked. "That guy from the wedding. Your friend mentioned you seemed different when you came back." "Yes and no. It's not just about him. It's about me. About how I've been building a life that looks right but doesn't feel right. I love you. I know. And I care about you. But I don't love you. Not the way you deserve to be loved." He took the ring back quietly. There were no dramatic scenes, no anger, just sadness and the recognition that sometimes caring about someone isn't enough. That afternoon, Maya walked into her boss's office and requested a leave of absence. The shock on everyone's faces might have been funny if she weren't so scared. Maya, who never took vacation, who worked through holidays, who made partner track her entire identity, was walking away. "How long?" her boss asked. "I don't know. I need to figure some things out. If you leave now, partnership might not be on the table when you get back." "I understand." Walking out of that office felt like stepping off a cliff. No net, no plan, just free fall. She packed a bag that night. Not the efficient packing of a business trip, but random things that felt important. Books she'd been meaning to read, comfortable clothes, the box of letters. Her hands shook as she loaded her car. This was insane. She was throwing away everything she'd worked for. Everything that proved she'd survived leaving this town the first time. But maybe that was the problem. She'd been so focused on surviving that she forgot to actually live. The drive took 6 hours. Maya's mind raced the entire way, cycling between determination and terror. What if Ethan had moved on? What if he didn't want to hear from her? What if she was making the biggest mistake of her life? She arrived at his workshop in the afternoon. The sign read, "Coastal Boat Repair," in faded letters. Through the open garage door, she could see him bent over an engine, hands covered in grease, completely focused on his work. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, gathering courage. Finally, she got out and walked toward the workshop. He must have heard her footsteps because he looked up, and she watched surprise cross his face, followed quickly by caution. "Maya?" "Hi." He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, not quite smiling. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to talk to you." "Bit of a drive for a conversation." She deserved that. She deserved his wariness and his carefully neutral tone. "Can we go somewhere? Please?" He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Let me clean up." They drove in separate cars to the lighthouse. She followed his truck, memories washing over her with every familiar turn. At the top, the ocean stretched endless and blue, and she remembered standing here with him just weeks ago. "So," he said, leaning against the railing, "what's so important you drove 6 hours?" "I'm sorry. For running. Again. For hurting you. For being so scared of feeling anything real that I convinced myself my life was exactly what I wanted." "Maya, please let me finish. I wrote you letters. Years ago. Dozens of them. I never sent them because I was afraid. I kept them in a box and tried to pretend that chapter of my life was closed. But it wasn't. It never was." She pulled out one of the letters, the one she'd read that sleepless night. "This is from when I was 21. I was already building walls around myself, already choosing safety over happiness, and I kept making that choice over and over until I forgot there were other options." Ethan took the letter, reading it silently. When he looked up, his expression had softened slightly. "When you said my name at the wedding," she continued, "something in me woke up, something I'd buried so deep I forgot it existed, and it terrified me. So I ran, like I always do. I went back to the city and I got engaged to someone I don't love, and I kept winning cases that don't matter, and I kept pretending I was fine." "You got engaged?" "I broke it off. I quit my job. Well, took a leave. I don't know anymore. I just know that hearing you say my name made me realize I've been sleepwalking through my own life. That's a lot to put on someone saying your name. It wasn't just that. It was how you said it. Like I mattered. Like you still saw me. The real me, under all the armor I built." Ethan was quiet, looking out at the ocean. Maya's heart pounded. She'd said everything. Now there was nothing to do but wait. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know. I just know that I drove 6 hours because I couldn't spend one more day pretending I didn't want to be here." "Here? In this town? Or here with me?" Both. Either. I'm not good at this. I don't have a plan. I don't know how to make this work. I just know that when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before I turned myself into someone I thought I was supposed to be. Ethan turned to look at her fully. You hurt me. When you left the first time, and again a few weeks ago, I don't know if I can go through that again. I know. I can't promise I won't mess this up. I probably will. I'm still figuring out how to be honest instead of efficient. How to feel things instead of managing them. Why now? Why come back? Because I finally got everything I thought I wanted, and it felt empty. Because I realized I've been running from the wrong things. Because you whispered my name and I fell apart. And that scared me so much I had to face it. He stepped closer, and she held her breath. Say my name, he said quietly. What? Say my name. The way I said yours. Like it means something. Ethan. Her voice broke on it. Ethan, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I keep running. I'm sorry I don't have this figured out. But I'm here. And I'm trying. And I need you to know that this time I'm not disappearing. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. I never stopped loving you either, she whispered. I just convinced myself I had. He pulled her close, and she let herself be held, really held, without thinking about what came next, or how it looked, or whether it made sense. I can't promise this will be easy, he said against her hair. I don't need easy. I need real. They stayed at the lighthouse until sunset, talking about everything. She told him about finding an apartment to rent in town, about doing consulting work remotely, about being terrified and excited in equal measure. He told her about being hurt, but also about understanding, about wanting to try, but needing to take it slow. We barely knew each other before, she said. We were kids. So we start over, date properly, figure out who we are now. No grand promises, no declarations of forever. Not yet. Let's just see what happens when you stop running and I stop waiting. They drove back to town separately, and Maya checked into a small hotel. Over the next few weeks, they had coffee dates and beach walks. She met his friends. He asked about her work. They learned each other's current lives, these adult versions of their younger selves. Sometimes it was awkward. Sometimes the past hung heavy between them. But slowly, carefully, they built something new on the foundation of what they once had. 3 months in, they had their first real fight about her considering taking a case that would require her to travel. They worked through it. She took the case but came home every weekend. 6 months in, Ethan took her out on his boat at sunset. The sky blazed pink and gold, and he said her name, that same whisper that started everything. Maya. This time, when she lost control, she wasn't afraid. She kissed him as the sun set over the ocean, and it felt like finally, after years of running, she'd found her way home. Not to a place, but to herself. And somehow, miraculously, to him.